us know.
Okay.
Jeff, tell us where you're from.
Okay, well, again, yeah, my name is Jeff Ritchie. I am the Director of Sponsored Programs at Hamilton College, which is a lovely, historic liberal arts college in upstate New York. At Hamilton, we were just over the moon when we heard that they had made a Broadway musical about us. I thought, oh, who's going to play me? Turns out not about us at all, actually. But we are, Alexander Hamilton is our namesake. Back in 1793, when we were the Oneida Oriskany Academy, he was on our original board of directors. So after that SOB, Aaron Burr shot him, and yeah, we hold a grudge up here on the Hill. In 1812, we renamed ourselves and became a college. We're one of the, I believe we're in the state of New York, only Columbia University has been around longer than us. It's a lovely place to work, a lovely place to visit. Come out sometime. I have been a member of the RAC board I was on for 10 years, which is like, you don't get that much time for armed robbery. But I was on the board for 10 years. I took a year off and now I am a board emeritus, which I believe is Latin for old guy. And so I will be in that capacity for at least the next 4 years. So at least until death or retirement do us part. So, and I've been certified since, I'm not totally certain when, 2002, something like that. So, oh my goodness, it's coming up on 20 years now. And both, I have a CRA and a CFRA. I got the CFRA because I was one of the writers of the original exam. We wrote it and then they just said, we're going to give you the credential because clearly you could pass it if you took it right now. So I've been a CFRA as well. And I have the last 10 years traveled just about everywhere, except to Colorado. No, actually I have been to Denver. I take that back. Doing body of knowledge review sessions. I did one in Denver some time ago. Actually, it was the same year that Bob Denver died. I thought, oh, well, that's nice. And in his honor, you legalized weed. So that was a lovely thing to do for him. So we will go ahead and get started. Let me share my screen here. And slideshow. So we're going to talk about preparing for the CRA exam, what it's like, some of the resources. And of course, the important thing is panic control, as always. So there you go. Oh, I've been a CRA since 2004. All right. Well, I'm younger than I thought. Yay. Former chair of Region 4. I am now in NCURA Region 2. I don't know if Tricia, can verify this. It's a frightening thing to change NCURA regions. I had been in Region 4 my entire year, and then changed. And yeah, the first meeting, I was like, if you ever seen Mean Girls, where that first day at school, Lindsay Lohan is in the bathroom, like sitting there by herself eating lunch. That's pretty much the way I was at my first Region 2 meeting. But I've been here now since 2018. So I've recovered. I can eat with actual people now. RAC, actually Research Administrator Certification Council. Sometimes people don't actually know what it stands for. Was established in 1993. It was a bit of an experiment. There's some really interesting history behind it. Back in 93, early 90s, 1990, 91, there was a huge debate among both SRA and in NCURA about whether or not this could even be done. There were people who said research administration isn't a profession. And you couldn't possibly create a test for it. SRA provided some seed money, and well, we did it. The first test came out in like 1993 or maybe 94. I'm not totally certain when the first actual exam was taken. But the members of the RAC board are all research administrators, all active, except as an emeritus. I could retire anytime, and some people in my institution wish I would. But to be an active board member, you must be active in the field of research administration. Technical support, the actual creation of the exam itself, that is provided by Professional Testing Corporation, which is right down in Times Square in New York City. From there, from their conference room, you can look right down on top of Macy's. If you're familiar with the Thanksgiving Day parade where the review stand is, right in front of Macy's, they are like right above it. Administrative support, this was started, I believe, about a year and a half ago, is provided by IMI Association Executives. They are an association management company. PTC used to do all of it. And if you're taking the exam, you will still have some contact with PTC because they still handle the exam registration. So you will know who they are. Less so actually with IMI. They kind of deal with us. So the various reasons why you might decide that you want to get certified. In my case, back in 2004, I was working at the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine in the central office. And the interim director there at the time said, well, you know what, people come to the central office because they want arguments settled between them, the departmental administrators, and their PIs who want to do things they probably shouldn't be doing. So she said, go out and get that credential. You should all have it. So we all went out and got it. So it was kind of a requirement for us to at least attempt the exam. For others, it's just a matter of being personally and professionally challenging, and the test is all of that. It's a credential that can follow you anywhere in the country. We have CRAs in all 50 states and actually several foreign countries as well. We have some members of the federal government who work in the grant making end of things have become CRAs themselves. What I often say to people who are hiring managers, this profession has a tendency to be a little transient. Somebody who is a research administrator last year might be working in advancement this year, or maybe not even working at the institution at all. It's a way for you to demonstrate that you've got some commitment to this profession. This is not an easy exam. You have to spend a good deal of time preparing for it and then passing it. So it's a way to say to a hiring manager, I'm going to be here next year. I'm not going to find something else that I want to do. So what are the qualifications? We talk about relevant work experience. And that would be, the obvious is going to be, yes, I work in the Office of Sponsored Programs at University of Colorado or Colorado State or wherever. Yes, that is obviously relevant work experience. But if you also work maybe for a grant making agency within the government, or a foundation, so you understand how grants work, that could be considered relevant. If you work in healthcare and do clinical trials, that also could be considered relevant experience. When I took the exam, I had been most recently, before I started working at the university, I had been working for a private contractor, an engineering and construction company out at a place called Fernald, near Cincinnati, which was basically a uranium foundry. It was the first step in the creation of a nuclear weapon. Raw uranium ore came in, and it was refined before getting shipped out for further processing. Well, this is an environmental cleanup. And so my company had a contract with the Department of Energy to clean up their mess, basically. And we had to deal with EPA regulations. We had to deal with, of course, the Department of Energy. We had the Department of Defense. We had the Ohio EPA in there. We had OSHA in there. So, I knew my FARs inside out and backwards. So that was considered part of my relevant work experience. I had only been in university research administration for about a year. What we really, and when I was chair, I would get these contacts all the time. We really don't encourage people without some relevant experience, 3 years worth at least, from taking the exam, because it's challenging. And depending on where you are, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, depending on where you have been working in those 3 years, it can be more or less challenging. But I've had people who have, smart people, the person has an MBA and used to be a bank branch manager. I'm certain they are, competent and qualified in many ways, but they'd only been doing university research administration for 6 months, and honestly, there's just no way they would pass. I had an international. I think she was from Austria, somebody who was a PI on a at a research institution somewhere in Austria, wanted to get the credential, and she didn't even have. It wasn't even the work that she did was not even part of like an NIH grant or something like that. All of her funding was from the EU, and I said, no, you would never pass this exam with just no relevant experience at all. So it is difficult to pass. If you don't have 3 years, and I think I'm missing a slide in here somewhere. Let me tell you, it's 3 years relevant experience and a bachelor's or higher. So a master's and a PhD. Well, I'm sure your mom is proud of you, but it doesn't make any difference with us. It's still 3 years of experience. I believe it's 5 years and an undergraduate. And this is why I always have this on a slide, because I can never remember that right. I believe it's 5 years and an associate's degree, and 6 years and just a high school diploma. I really, caution people against taking it too early. If we do it twice a year. So if you've only got 2.5 years of experience, wait till the next time. Give yourself another 6 months. That way you can go to a regional CRA meeting or a national meeting or PRA, FRA or something like that, and soak up some more information and spend a little more time prepping for it. Don't be in a hurry. We had a lot of people a few years back as the uniform guidance was being implemented who were rushing off to take the exam as fast as they could because they didn't want to have to deal with the uniform guidance. And the pass rates went to the floor, alarmingly so. Normally, we try to have a pass rate of about 65, 66%. So, a third of the people who take it do not pass. We were dropping down to like nearly 50%. And we were like, what do we do? Do we change the exam? And it was just a matter of people were just taking it without preparing adequately for it, or taking it without enough years of experience.
Hey, Jeff, I had somebody ask me if they have to prove their years of experience. I assume it's just an honesty thing when you're applying for the test.
Yeah, if you have the years of experience, I think you're fine. If you don't, you should petition. And honestly, I really don't recommend taking it without the minimum years of experience, because it's hard enough when you've got the experience. A third of the people, some of them 7 to 10 years, they've been doing this, and they still did not pass on the first attempt. So I think the only time you have to provide any sort of documentation is if you are asking for a waiver from the experience. So if you have it, you don't. So this is the exam itself. It's 250 multiple choice questions. They are A, B, C, D. We'll get into kind of more of the nuances of these questions. 4 hours to complete the exam. And that is from start to finish. Typical score is 175 correct answers. There is some insanely complicated math problem that I, as an English major, just do not understand. That PTC applies to let us know what the pass score should be. They tried to explain it to me one time, and my eyes just glazed over and I fell out of the chair. But it has not changed the entire time I've been on the board. It's been 175. Questions are written by current CRAs. One thing that you will do after you pass the exam, when it comes time to renew, you'll send us your renewal check and 3 questions. And these will be in raw form. And then once a year, and we may start doing this more often than that, but at least once a year, we get together virtually now. We used to do this live and in person. We get together virtually with someone from PTC, who they are the experts in test preparation. We get together with PTC and we go through these kind of raw questions, and it's just a bunch of people with their laptops open. We're looking up stuff, and we make sure that there is 1 right answer, 3 wrong answers. PTC helps us to make sure that the test is worded, phrased appropriately. There are certain questions PTC does not care for. I think that's on a slide coming up, but they have kind of their rules that how a question should be written, and they make sure that they are. The body of knowledge, now this may change slightly in the next year or two. We just completed a new job task analysis. So the percentages, the 4 sections will stay the same. Those percentages may flex just a little bit based on what the job task analysis tells us. Currently, if you're taking the exam in the next year, it's project development and administration. Kind of, if you squint at it, that's kind of pre-award, is 30%. Legal requirements and sponsor interface, you could call that compliance. 30% financial management, post-award financial management. And then general management, which is 15, and there ought to be a percent on there, but there is not, 15%. We get into a lot of salary and HR issues and subawards. So that's where a lot of that stuff lives. I want to point out there are 4 parts to the body of knowledge, but when you take the exam, it's not like the CPA exam where you can like pass 2 parts and fail 2 parts, and you come back and only take the 2 parts that you failed. CRA exam, you pass or fail it as a whole. So even though the 4 parts is just how we divvy it up. The other thing to remember is the percentages that you see here, which again may flex a little bit. That is not the weighting of a particular question. So like a project development and administration question does not count for twice as much as a general management question. They both count for exactly the same thing. It's just the sheer number of questions that will be on the exam. There will be twice as many project development and administrations as there is general management. So 30% of the questions will be out of one and only 15% out of the other. So every question counts exactly the same. One thing people have asked me often over the years is, is it okay to guess? And my answer is, if you can guess correctly 175 times, hey, you're a CRA. There is no penalty for guessing. There is no penalty for leaving it blank, or any benefit for leaving something blank. My take is, if you really just absolutely don't know the answer, put down B. You got a 25% chance of being right. But yeah, guessing and leaving it blank, you either answer the question correctly or you didn't. So things that we're going to talk about here, some more about the exam questions, things you should know before the exam, during, and what happens next after you take the exam. So like I said, questions are reviewed by CRAs. Actually, they're reviewed twice, because at another time during the year, the exam creation team sits down with questions, including the ones that were on the exam last time, and some of these new ones that have just been created, and some that we have in what we call the question bank, and they assemble the exam. And at that time, they will take another look at questions before they put them in to make sure they're good. The questions, and this is again where PTC helps us, we have performance data, if you will, on prior questions. So we know, 75% of the people got that question right last time, or 75% got that wrong. So we do have a mix of, there will be some softballs in there and some harder questions in there. One thing I hear a lot is people will tell me, well, when you take the exam, the questions start out easy, then they get progressively harder, which is actually not true. The questions are completely jumbled. So there is no rhyme or reason to it. You won't start, for example, with part 1 of the body of knowledge. You might start with a question right out of part 4 or 3 or 2 or wherever. So they're completely scrambled. My theory of the crime is that as you get into hour 4 of taking the exam, it's probably all the questions start seeming kind of hard. And maybe you're starting to panic a little bit, but no, it's all completely random. A PTC rule is there are no all of the above or none of the above, or both A and B, or both C and D. It is 1 right answer, 3 what we call distractors that are the wrong answer. And the other thing PTC is pretty adamant on is which is not questions. Because according to PTC, and you know, I absolutely agree with them, this is a reading comprehension question. In reading the root of that question, if your brain processed the word not, chances are you got a pretty good chance of getting the answer correct. If your brain didn't answer which is, and then you go down to those answers, you'll get it wrong almost every time. So they say nope. It's everything is like in the positive. So if you see one of those, it's by mistake.
Hey, Jeff, I apologize
Yes.
if you've already answered this. Some people are wondering about the new body of knowledge when it's coming
Yes.
out.
That one I'm not totally sure of because I have
Okay.
not been. We haven't had an in-person board meeting since I rolled off. They have not, as far as I know, they are not changing the next form of the test, which is the one that they'll put together in September. So I think the next year, the 21-22 test will be still off the same body of knowledge.
Okay. And so uniform guidance updates haven't happened.
Oh no, uniform guidance is totally on there. Yeah.
No, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, but the new updates to uniform
yeah,
guidance.
the new updates.
New
Oh, well,
updates.
that's a good ancillary question, actually. You know, how fast does something get on to the exam? And you know, this I always tell people this is not a current events quiz, because I mean, just think if it's January and your CRA is going to expire in February, and you sit down and you write a question, and and you go to the latest guidance. Say it's January 2019, and you got that brand new IRB guidance that came out in 2019, and you wrote questions on the basis of those. You send them in February. It might be till after the new form of the test came out that anybody got around to actually reviewing that particular question. So around the horn we go, and it might be a year and a half until a new question on that new IRB guidance actually gets on the exam. It takes a while, which was a nightmare for us in trying to implement uniform guidance. But we try to write questions so that it's clear, what part of the guidance you're dealing with. But if it's something that just happened like a month ago or 2 months ago, it's going to be the old guidance, because it takes a while for a new question to get onto the exam. That's a really good point to make, and it's what I usually do like to point out. Because people had asked me, years ago, people had asked me about sequestration. I'm like, no, that's not going to be on there. So before the exam, what you typically do is you'll go out to the PTC website. It's the RAC website, but PTC runs that part of it for us, and you sign up to take the exam. Keep in mind, it will we have testing centers all over the country, and we changed testing center companies while I was off on my 1-year sabbatical, and I can't remember who the new one is, but they changed them because the new place has more locations, and I thought the old place had a ton of locations. Chances are if you have an airport anywhere near you, chances are they do a lot of airline mechanics. It's a big business for them. People who have to be certified as airline mechanics. So even if there's a small airport near you, chances are there's one nearby, but they are also everywhere. There is one on Michigan Avenue in Chicago, and if you're familiar with that at all, that's like the middle of the high-end shopping district in Chicago. I have absolutely no idea why they're there, yet they are, unless it's just to cater exclusively to Northwestern's medical campus. And it could be because nursing exams are also part of their business. So you sign up to take the exam and ask for an address. And that all of that about all the locations is to get at. Be mindful of what you put down for your address if you have the world's worst commute. If you're planning to take it on Saturday, when you'd probably be driving from home to get to the testing center, make sure you put in your home address. If you're going to be taking it during the week, you might want to put in your work address. If it's 50 miles in the wrong direction to get there from one location or the other, just kind of keep that in mind. it'll come up with, based on what you put in, it'll give you the 3 closest locations to you. So so you pick the location, you pick the time. I always tell people, scout the testing center. I've read articles where they're talking about people who are especially driving to a location they have never been to before, experience higher levels of stress. The drive there seems like it's taking longer than it actually does. They ask people to estimate how long did it take, and they wildly higher. You know, you're about to take a high stakes exam. Do you really need to give yourself an extra stressor that particular morning? You know, you get there, you're almost there, and you realize, oh my gosh, this road is closed for construction, and now I have to take a detour. And then you're having a grand mal freakout. So I would say, you know, a few days before, drive there, just so you know where it is. You know, make sure that you can make a left-hand turn into the parking lot, that it's not a divided road or something like that. Go in, say hi. Know what your surroundings are. What your surroundings will likely be. Now, this is a new company, but I think they all kind of work the same way. You will have what looks like, depending on the specific location, something that looks a bit like a bus locker, right? You have to put your purse, your laptop, your everything in there. You take the key, it's all in there. You can also just leave it in the trunk of your car. But you can't take anything in there, no phone. They will actually check your watch to make sure it is not internet capable. And so you go in, and it's just basically a bunch of computer carols. They usually have a pad of paper and a pencil or pen. There are some math questions on there, very easy stuff. You know, it's a $250,000 award, and you have a 50% MTDC F&A rate. After F&A is taken out, how much is available for direct costs, assuming no exclusions to your MTDC. So it's, you know, simple stuff like that. There is an onboard calculator that you can use, but if you're old school and like, you know, if it's a comfort factor, which is it is for me, I would write them out and actually do them by hand. So that's the testing center itself. Once you get there, you get in, get a good night's sleep. Don't stay up late. Eat a good breakfast, not a huge breakfast. This is the where I tell people, you have 4 hours to take the exam. There are no potty breaks. Okay. Once you log in, and the exam person will help you do this. You log in and you start the exam, the clock starts running and there is no stopping it. So for breakfast, I'm going to skip the breakfast burrito. Do I need that 4th cup of coffee this morning to get me going? Just keep that in mind. You have to, part of your strategy. I don't know. Remember years ago, there was that woman astronaut who was jealous of her husband who's an astronaut, and yeah, never mind. That's an old story. Anyway, wear comfortable clothing, especially comfortable shoes. This is just an existential thing, but no matter what you're doing, taking the CRA exam, bullfighting, whatever it is, wear comfortable shoes. Get there a little bit early, especially if you haven't had the chance to really scope the place out. So you're not like running in late, out of breath, and feeling like you're feeling rushed. You can start anytime. If you scheduled at 10 o'clock, and assuming they're open before 10, if you scheduled at 10 o'clock and you get there at 10 till 10, you can kind of hang out, use the restroom one last time, kind of see where everything is, kind of center yourself, get ready, and then go in at 5 till 10, and you can go ahead and start. Assuming that there's a carol available and they're not completely packed, but they usually aren't. So, get there a little bit early just so you can kind of, prepare yourself. As I said, no personal items in the examination room. The clock won't stop. So, really good idea to make it one last pit stop before you go in to take the exam. This is the important thing. And I'm going to probably mention this a couple of times. You have 4 hours. to complete the exam, which 250 questions in 4 hours, that sounds like, wow, I don't have a lot of time. I have actually never had somebody come up to me when I'm working the booth in CRA or SRA and tell me I didn't have enough time to finish the exam. I get complaints of every other thing under the sun, but I've never heard anybody come up. And I asked Pat Bunnemeyer about this, and some of you may know Pat. Pat was on our board. She was actually a founding member of our board. She was on since 1993, just retired a couple of years ago. And I had the pleasure of traipsing all over this country with Pat and doing presentations, which was just delightful beyond anything. But Pat also confirmed to me she'd never had anybody say, I ran out of time. So you have more time than you think. Don't let yourself be rushed. If you have a question that you're just really not sure on, you can flag it and you can come back and get it later. Don't flag like 200 questions and try to come back and redo 200 of them. But don't spend 20 minutes stewing over one question. It's not worth it. But as you're doing it, because you have more time than you think, read the question. You'll have a stem that we call it, and then read all 4 answers. Because sometimes answer A looks like the right one. And if you answer and move on because you think, I'm in a hurry, I gotta go, you didn't get a chance to read answer D, and answer D was actually the right answer. And if you had read it, you would have agreed and you would have answered answer D. So, take your time, read the stem, read all 4 answers. I'm telling you, that's good for 10 points. I'm giving you 10 points on the exam right here, right now, just from that little piece of advice alone. Like I said, flag the questions you're not sure of, and honest, God, don't forget to breathe. We haven't lost anybody yet, but I don't want to start now. Basics: when you're answering a multiple choice question, anything that's clearly wrong. Some of the easy questions will have very obvious wrong answers. Something about financial management will be something like, and it can be, put in the principal investigator's personal checking account. That's the wrong answer, just in case, that's always going to be the wrong answer. So, some of them will be clearly wrong. So you can eliminate those. Eliminate anything that's got a technical term that's unfamiliar to you. I mean, I don't know everything about everything, but I've heard of just about everything. And if I'm seeing the whatchamacallit Act of 1934, I'm like, I've never even heard of that before. So I'm not going to answer that as the correct answer. I think that's a red herring that somebody made up. So if I can't even place it in my mental universe, that's not going to be a right answer. Use hints from the questions you know. I get this all the time. People say, oh, there's so many repetitions of these questions. No, there are not. There are no repetitions of the questions, but there will be some that are similar. Like I said, with the math problems, algebraically speaking, there's really only one way to ask that question. Once we take out the F&A, how much is left for direct cost? And we can mix it up a little bit, and they do. They'll say, it's $250,000 and $50,000 in equipment. How much after that 50% F&A, how much is left for direct costs? So we'll do that, but the algebra is going to always be the same. So use questions where you know the answer to it. Maybe you can suss out what the right answer was. And honestly, don't forget to breathe. A concept, and this is it. This, if you get nothing else out of today, this slide is it. Okay, we have a thing that we call the best right answer. PTC swears that these are not trick questions. I don't know. All questions are going to have a stem of the following, which is blah, 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 blah. A, B, C, D. A is the right answer. Not always, obviously. B, C, D are the 3 distractors. And we go through, and this is when we're putting these questions together, when they're being reviewed by other CRAs, we make sure of the 3 distractors that they are wrong, and that answer A is the right one. Sometimes the distractors might be right some of the time. you could say something effective with, to make a change in personnel, requires a, approval from the program officer, or which of the following requires approval from the program officer? There we go. I'm trying to write a question in my head. One of the answers might be a change in personnel. And if you saw that first, you might go, oh yeah, change PI, change key personnel. Yes, absolutely. A, gone. It didn't say key personnel, it didn't say PI. And answer D was like a change in scope, or a 35% change in budget, or something that is always going to require prior approval. Whereas sometimes with a change in personnel, depending on the personnel, it will require prior approval, but not all the time. So a change in personnel is going to a really good distractor answer if you have something that is absolutely always going to require prior approval from the program officer. So the best right answer is the one that's right all the time. This is why, slow down, read the STEM, read all 4 answers, then make your choice. Because it's very easy to pick the wrong answer because it kind of looked right at the time and you thought, oh yeah, sure, that must be the right one. Seriously, I said I was going to say this several times. So after the exam, PTC scores the test after the exam window closes. So, people have come up to me and said, I was taking this online exam, and the minute I got the right number of right answers, it stopped and said I had passed the test. And they're like, well, no, this is not Facebook. You finish the exam, you go home. If you got 9 a.m. at the testing center on the opening day of the testing window, your test will not get scored any faster than the person who showed up at 1 o'clock on the last day of the testing window. It's like that whole laborers in the vineyard parable. Okay, you all get treated the same. What we do then is we then do tabulate and collate all the answers. The next thing we do, and by we, I mean this is really more of a PTC thing. We get involved when we have to. If there is some, an individual question or two that maybe has an anomalously high failure rate. Like we said the answer was C, and 75% of the respondents said it was B. Okay, that's a lot. That's a lot of people to get it wrong and to all get the same wrong answer. So PTC, who they are not research administrators, will call up the executive committee and say, hey, we got a question we want you to look at. And as the executive committee, they will review that question. I never had it happen when I was on the executive committee that we had to say, oh, no, that question was wrong. It was always a matter of, no, it's just a darn hard question. And a lot of people got it wrong. If it would be a fact that we got a clinker that got into the mix, one of our 250 questions somehow in a dual review still was wrong and got through, what they would do is they just give everybody credit for that particular question. And it's a good thing we do, because I have to tell you, the worst part about being chair was every year I would get the results of the exam for everybody. And I would see every year there's 2 or more people who, 175 is a passing score, and they got 174. I was like, I know these people worked just as hard as the one who got 176. And that person passed and they didn't. So if 1 point will do you, we'll get you there. But I just gave you 10 points, so there's no excuse for you. So we do check those out, and then we send out the final results by mail. It always comes in by mail. We don't use email for this. For the fall one, it usually comes a couple of days before Christmas. So Santa, lumps of coal, I don't know. But it takes about 6 weeks after the close of the testing window. And I don't know if they still do this. When I was chair, we would take whoever got the highest score in the country for that year, and we would send a letter to that person and to that person's boss saying, congratulations, you scored the highest on the CRA exam in the United States, and that's something, that's an achievement, and we thought it was something worth recognizing, and something that we thought your boss should recognize as well. So that's why we always send it to the individual and to the individual's supervisor. I had suggested that we start sending out a letter to the person who got the lowest score, but people just thought that was gratuitously mean, so we didn't do that. So any questions about preparing for the exam or taking the exam? If you're preparing, couple things. The best is to have a group. I took it with 3 other people, and we kind of divvied up the body of knowledge, and we had Friday study sessions together. When there was stuff we didn't know, none of us were experts in animal subjects. Our study session took place Friday at lunchtime. So we would, dangle a sandwich in front of, whoever ran the animal facility and have them come in and explain stuff to us. We would read, but we would have, that person come in and clarify things for us. And we had someone from, sponsored programs accounting came in for a lot of the post-award financial stuff, that kind of thing. So a group is helpful. Going to NCURA meetings strategically, you tend to go to those sessions that deal with your job. Well, the thing about your job is it well enough to pass almost any question that's going to be on the CRA exam. So what you really ought, invest a little time, go to something you don't know anything about. And that can usually be pretty helpful. Hold on. Man, am I glad I'm wearing pants today. All right. Little NCURA. I'm not sure. I have the blur function on. Okay, you can't see this. Regulation and Compliance Guide from NCURA. Very handy. It takes just about every law that deals with sponsored programs. And some of them only, they weren't created to deal with sponsored programs. So they winnow out everything that's non-sponsored programs related. And you just get this very nice 1-page, very succinct summary of that law. So that's for the compliance section, that's great. For animals, chances are your institution has a subscription to City Research. And because they've kind of conquered the world, so I've rarely come across an institution that doesn't have a subscription. Go ahead and create an account for yourself, because your institution is paying a lump sum, based on their enrollment or something like that. But your having an account does not cost your institution anything. So you can take like the basic IRB course for someone, and I wouldn't get into like the medical stuff. Do like the like social science research. That's going to cover probably just about anything that's going to be on the exam. You can also take one on IACUC for animal research. Depending on what your institution subscribes to, there's probably responsible conduct of research, so you can learn that stuff. So that's a great study tool. What else? If you go online, there is, we have the body of knowledge in kind of annotated form with links to source documents that are good for studying. But honestly, group study, I think, is the best way to go. We, for years, and I can't remember if Virginia Tech, they kind of paused their program, but I think they've started it again. And we used to keep pretty close track on Virginia Tech folk, and they were passing the exam at like 80% or better. And I think we had, last I looked, I think we had some pretty similar numbers for the AIM Higher program at the University of Michigan. That it's a structured group study sessions, series of study sessions. I want to say they're like 10 weeks or something like that, which is probably a decent amount of time for prepping if you're being diligent about it. So any other questions?
So there was curiosity if somebody's gotten 100%.
No, no. I want to say that what was the highest I think I've seen was like 223, which is pretty darn impressive. And I think I saw one under 100, which I will name no names. But yeah, it's what makes this exam challenging. And well, hey, this is practically geographically relevant to you guys, close anyway. I always tell people it's because it's like the Platte River, right? It's famously, 2 miles wide and 2 feet deep, which I got to tell you, when I do this in LA, I just get dumb stares back at me. The who, but that's what makes it hard is you don't have to be the world's foremost expert in anything in research administration to pass the exam, but you have to be able to know a little bit about all of it. It's I've compared it to having to give 35 elevators talks. You have to know some. You don't have to be perfectly expert in it, but you have to know some. And I can tell you too, the one thing that I was mistaken about for years, I thought, okay, here's what happens, right? You're a pre-award person. And so you just like stick the landing on that first section, you blow it out of the water, and then you like drag yourself across the finish line of like the post-award financial stuff because you really don't know that. And you don't have a passing score in post-award financial, but you did so well on the pre-award that it saves the day. That actually doesn't happen. Almost never does that happen. People who tend to pass the exam pass all 4 sections, and people who fail the exam tend to basically fail all 4 sections. So it's not what I thought it was.
Great. We also have some people who recently took the exam. I don't know if Liz Grinstead, if you're still on, if you could share your experience, if you could say everything Jeff just went over was hogwash, feel free. And
yeah, Jeff doesn't know anything. I don't know why you invited him.
I have never watched a hog in my life.
No, I mean, it's all really good pro tips and everything. I found that there were a lot of regulatory questions when I took the test this past May, June time period. And I just didn't realize how in depth I needed to go into regulatory. So that's something I would definitely suggest people brush up on, just because a lot of our jobs just kind of briefly skim over like the IACUC, IBC, IRB stuff versus doing that deep dive into all of it. I also, I really like multiple choice tests because they're so formulaic and you can like really narrow down to like 2 questions. Mm-hmm. And so just kind of understanding how multiple choice questions work if you haven't taken a test in a really long time. Just really kind of diving into like, okay, here's how a multiple choice exam is like really created to be, and then you can usually cross out 2 of 4 answers, and then if you don't know between the 2, guess kind of thing. Yeah. And then I studied a lot. I made flashcards, I wrote stuff down, I would go on walks in the evening with my husband and he would quiz me and then get mad at me when or I'd get mad at him when I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I said. He's like, it's not what you wrote down. So, studying with someone who knows research administration also can help versus someone who doesn't. But it's also really interesting to be like studying with someone who does not know research administration and then can only base on what you've actually put down.
That's funny. So somebody had written in a question about, sorry, the question just escaped me here. Where you go? Oh, suggestions for studying sponsors for which you may be unfamiliar. And from my memory, it's NIH, NSF heavy. Are there other sponsors that you two would say people should brush up on?
No, it's almost exclusively federal. I don't know of, I mean, I don't know of any, I don't know what's on the exam because I am by law, by RAC law anyway, not allowed to see the exam. So I can't be accused of teaching to the test. But what I have been told by people who put the test together and by people who take the exam is there's almost nothing on there about like foundation sponsors. It's heavily federal. And to the extent that it gets specific federal, it's NSF and NIH.
Yeah, I do have to say, I do remember one question where it was like, if you were applying for like an animal subject research kind of thing, which of these foundations would you submit to? So that was kind of interesting because the foundations were definitely not global, and I had no idea what any of the foundations were. So I just kind of guesstimated on that one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's unusual. And the other thing too, with regard to clinical trials, that's not a place where you need to go very deep into, because while we'll talk about human subjects research, we really don't get into the nuts and bolts of management of clinical trials. There is a certified clinical CCRA, certified clinical research administrator, different organization altogether. So we kind of, we stay off their turf and they stay off ours. So we don't do, you have to know basics of human subjects research, but essentials of like clinical trials, not so much. If you take, and I totally, it was like my RAC commercial, if you decide to take one of the body of knowledge review sessions, you'll get a book. And in that book, there'll be an entire list of acronyms. And I always tell people, don't spend a lot of time like quizzing yourself on acronyms, because, again, it's not a trivia exam, not a trivia quiz. If you know what NSF stands for, you're probably okay. So I'm always worried that people are like drilling, weird, esoteric acronyms into their head and not spending their time studying for important stuff.
Okay,
She-
great. And so somebody was asking about multiple choice. So no multiple choice, always 4 true, false, never A and B, B and C,
Yeah.
all the above, none of the above. Somebody
Four
else
answers,
asked
one
about,
right.
so somebody asked about tips for CFRA, which I think also would be kind of CPRA, like if they're the exams that do deeper dives, what kind of tips
Right.
may be in those?
And for both of those, then you might start seeing some sponsor specific types of questions, like in the pre-award, I think I don't know if there are questions. I'm just thinking of the training that we do. We do talk about things like training grants and some of the specific peculiarities when you're putting together a training grant budget. And in CFRA, we'll get into how you transfer projects between 2 institutions, which barely comes up in the CRA exam.
Great. Liz, did you have something else to say? I apologize if I cut you off.
Oh, no. I was just going to say that one of the questions was about how long did you study? So I took a practice test and then I made flashcards on the ones I didn't know. They don't give you the answers, but you can then research if you do what I did and take a snip of every single question as you're taking it and put it into a Word document. So then you have all the questions and what you answered, and then you can kind of be like, okay, I definitely knew this one. I didn't know this one, kind of thing. So I did take the practice test. I did find the practice test to be easier than the actual test. So some people say the opposite, but maybe I just knew more of what was on the practice test. And I took one of Trisha's courses, and then I studied for about a month or 2, pretty heavy, before my actual exam.
Yeah, the questions that are on the practice exam are questions that have never been on the actual exam. When I first got on the board, I just assumed they were like retired questions, but those were ones that were written especially for the practice exam. So you won't see that exact question, but again, there's only so many different ways you can word something about an allowable cost or something like that. So.
And it is the case, they don't give you the right or wrong answers. The practice exam is really just to practice being in that space of taking
Right.
an exam, right?
Right.
Okay. And somebody asked where, and that's something they can get through PTC. They pay a fee and
Yes.
can do a practice. Okay.
Yeah.
So don't think you're going to take the practice exam that's going to let you know what's on the exam or you're going to be able to save. It's just, if you're a very nervous test taker or haven't taken ones particularly online in a while, you might want to get in that space of practicing.
Yeah. And I always tell people the body of knowledge review sessions are a good first step in preparation, because the chief benefit is that at the end of the day, and it's a full day, at the end of the day, you're able to go, okay, I know exactly what I know, and I know what I don't know. So I really know the areas where I need to spend time. But it's, I can tell you, I've had people who said, yeah, I took the practice exam and then I didn't do anything else and I didn't pass the exam. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's not meant, because first of all, we don't know what's on the exam. So, it's not like I can tell you the answer to number 117 is C. I have no idea what it is. So it's going to be of limited use in that regard, but it will tell you, in terms of the body of knowledge, what types of things are going to be on the exam.
I also want to mention that we have some training coordinator experts in the chat today, or on the stream. So like Trisha Callahan runs the CSU study program. If you want to contact her, I know Nikki Spaeth from CU Boulder runs a program for University of Colorado. So if you have, if you know who your expert is on campus and how to get connected to your specific campus or state resources, drop those in the chat for the group.
Great. And Virginia Tech, if you just look up Virginia Tech CRA in Google, it pulls up a recording archive, and they have recorded some of their training sessions, and you can watch their training sessions as well. Yeah. So, and Adam's going to remember come November that the answer, not to answer question 117. Speaking of November, Catherine, what do we have coming up in November?
Yeah, we have a save the date for identifying microaggressions. We're going to have a special guest speaker again on November 11th. So we'll see you hopefully at noon on that day. We are also having a feedback survey. Trisha posted that in the chat. So we appreciate any feedback that you can offer us as we continue to build these programs for you and sessions. We want to know if presentations like this were helpful, and if you missed some of the discussions we had last year, what are discussion topics you want to see? You can also submit that anytime on our PEDC website that I posted in the top of the chat. With that, we will conclude today's webinar. The recording will be posted on our website, as I mentioned, with resources that we discussed in the chat. You can also find announcements on there and upcoming things for PEDC. Thank you for your participation, everyone, in today's webinar.